Throughout history, we've seen a lot of different Bowser henchmen, helping him in his evil missions of punching some Italians while taking over a kingdom filled with mushroom heads. And one of the most well-known groups of helpers we've seen in the games are the Koopalings, who are basically a bunch of adopted children. Now, while they are certainly a fan favorite, I want to point out a couple of things that are completely wrong, because they certainly aren't perfect. So let's dive right in. Little side note, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell button since some of you forget to do this. Now, in order to make sure that the video has structure, I want to divide all my problems with these characters into 4 segments. The 4 deadly sins. However, don't take all of this too seriously. I might criticize them, but I still like them a lot, and they are important to the series, so calm down. Now let's start with the very first one. They are too similar to each other in a lot of ways, to be honest. First of all, their look. Now, while Koopalings like Roy and Ludwig have clear visual differences, like the glasses and hair, they are still the same in so many ways. For example, their overall model is extremely similar to each other, and the thing that sets them apart is all the stuff added to them. They're all just slightly different variations of each other, nothing more and nothing less. And all of this was especially bad in older games. Just look at titles like Super Mario World and Super Mario Bros. 3. Here, the console couldn't really make very detailed sprites, and thanks to that, they all look the same. Luckily enough though, this got better in time because the more powerful consoles could finally show the difference between them better. But that's not all, because in battle, I also noticed one thing again and again and again. Nintendo tends to copy and paste their abilities. Because every time you fight them, no matter what game it is, they always have a set of attacks that they always use. Especially in a title like Super Mario Bros. 3. Here, all they do is spin around the room while being inside their shells, jumping around, and shooting magic blasts. And you might think,
but Wily, that's just in the older games. In the more modern titles, they have other special attacks as well, you know?
Oh yeah, totally. Like Morton Koopa with his hammer that he uses to smack a bunch of Poke segments at you. However, while things like this are certainly seen, we only get to experience that in the second battle with them. Because the first one is always the same thing. You go into the boss room, they're shocked and get mad, shoot magic blasts, spin around and jump a bit, and that's it. So while their secondary battles are truly different and fun, the first ones are always the same old stale attacks in almost every Super Mario game, which shows that both the design and tactics in battle are quite simplistic and similar to each other, or even the same at times. Even when we look at their character, we can see that a lot of them are just the same blank slate, but with a different look. Sure, most of them are described in vastly different ways, but that doesn't mean they are truly different, because most of them act the exact same as the other Koopalings. Only in some spin-off games you would get a real taste of their given personality, but in the Super Mario games we never really saw a lot of this. All of this makes them less fun to take on or even interact with. So clearly, in my eyes, this is a flaw. But what's the second deadly sin? Well, the second one on my list is that they became quite generic after some time. For those who don't know, these Koopa bosses were first seen in the Super Mario franchise a very long time ago. We first saw them in the year 1988 when Super Mario Bros. 3 came out, and Nintendo had to make some new characters to act as bosses. In the very first game, you just fought fake Bowsers, and the second game won't be mentioned here, since it's a bit of a clone of another game. However, while they have been in the series for more than 30 years, yes, 30 freaking years, they haven't brought a whole lot of new things to the table in that time. Every game they had a similar scheme to kidnap Princess Peach together with Bowser and his son, so seeing them in an introduction of a game was quite boring at some point. Even the battles with them became extremely predictable and just straight up unoriginal at some point, yet again making them less and less special with every new game. If you look at returning characters like Bowser Jr. or even the main villain Bowser, you can see that they develop in certain ways. Their story, attacks and plans became more elaborate and interesting, while we don't see this as much with the Koopalings. Thanks to this, they became more and more boring, and that's why some people started to complain about them at some point. Players had seen them time and time again, with almost nothing changing in between titles. And so people wanted something new, which I totally understand. Nintendo could have solved this problem a long time ago, but they never bothered to do so. Which certainly didn't solve itself in time. In the end, we got the Boordals, but to be honest, they're just the same as the Koopalings, but at least have completely different abilities. But what about the third deadly sin? Well, for this one, we will actually look at their story, which is a complete mess and became even more confusing in time. Because in their first appearance in Super Mario Bros. 3, the Koopalings were introduced as siblings and Bowser's own children. Even most re-releases and remakes of this game, as well as republications of the game's story, keep this detail intact in Japan. The Wii Virtual Console manual even directly references to the Koopalings being Bowser's kids. So basically, they are just his children. And so people started to wonder, who's their mom then? We never see any female Koopas around Bowser. And we know they exist because Wendy is one. This went on for a couple of years, and as expected, Nintendo didn't explain anything, even though the fanbase was looking for an answer daily. But then, everything became more confusing and weird when Bowser Jr. came into the picture when we saw him in Super Mario Sunshine. And so, instead of just making an extra character, or even coming up with some other way to explain all of this, they did something really odd. When both the Koopalings and Bowser Jr. appeared together in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, it all changed, because the official website referred to the Koopalings as Bowser's minions, rather than his children, and comrades, rather than siblings. But the Prima Guide refers to them as Bowser's 8 kids, including Bowser Jr. now. So at this point, everyone was even more confused. Are they his children, or are they not? And we still didn't know where they came from. Thanks to all of this, their overall story became confusing and quite frustrating, because so much has been added to it without giving any real answers. After a couple of years, we finally got some more information, because in a September 2012 interview, Shigeru Miyamoto, speaking with Takashi Tezuka, went on record to say that their current story is that the 7 Koopalings are not Bowser's children, leaving Bowser Jr. as his only child with an unknown mother. So now it does make sense. Sort of. However, it isn't an interesting story at all, and very all over the place. Personally, I think this is a gigantic flaw and has been a confusing mess for years upon years. And in the end, it still wasn't satisfying. I have been looking for an answer for a really long time and only found a bunch of options, but no answers that Nintendo ever confirmed, making all of this very disappointing. We all know that Nintendo tends to struggle when making good stories in video games, and this is a great example of it all. By the way, if you want to see some of those videos where I look for an answer, then check in the upper right corner in description. However, let's first finish this video. Now let's move on to our last deadly sin. And that's the fact that while they are in a group together, they never work together. Every single game, they all just go to their own castles and towers, fight Mario one by one, and lose in the end. However, we never really see them work together in battles you have with them, or even certain levels. Personally, I think this is 100% a sin. All of them are in the Koopaling group, but never really do stuff together in the game. We have seen some things here and there, but overall it's not very special, and was only seen a handful of times in more than 30 years. For example, New Super Mario Bros. 2, where they are seen with the Koopa clown car to turn Mario into stone in the final castle by blasting a bright light. In order to dodge this, you hide behind pillars when they are about to blast you, and after that you need to get to the next one fast. Now this worked quite well, but I bet Nintendo could come up with even better ways to use all of them together in certain segments or battles. Like combining certain Koopalings that have combat abilities that work well together, or chasing them while they're in the Koopa clown car and you need to throw things at them while dodging stuff that they are throwing at you, while you overcome a platforming challenge as well. However, Nintendo never really did any of these things. But the very first time we ever saw the Boordals, they had an amazing group fight near the end of the game's story. The fact that they all pilot some gigantic mechanical beast together is just great. It was an extremely fun and interesting battle. But when it comes to the Koopalings, Nintendo just never does stuff like this and experiments less with them. Which is a real shame in my opinion, because they could have easily done stuff like this. However, they never really do a lot of special things with them. However, if you want something more special, then go look in the upper right corner or description for more awesome videos like my Koopaling ranking video. And there's even a whole playlist with a ton of videos there. Because when it comes to this video, I have one last thing to say. While I think the Koopalings are certainly flawed in some ways, they are still fun. Especially the fights you have with them in New Super Mario Bros. U are amazing and tons of fun. I like the Ludwig final battle the most, but no character or thing seen in any video game is perfect. Even my favorite game of all time, Zelda Majora's Mask, is flawed in ways. So don't be mad, and maybe in time we will see some of these deadly sins rectified.